Narragansett Bay is a huge, watery playground. The bay is heavily used for commercial and recreational purposes. It is an economic drawing card for the state of Rhode Island. Yet, 2/3 of the watersheds that feed Narragansett Bay come out of the state of Massachusetts. You see, waterways see no boundaries. They take the easiest route to the sea. Hi, I'm Chuck Arning, National Park Service Ranger here in the Blackstone River Valley National Heritage Corridor. I'm standing on the bow of the Trimarine Baykeeper, captained by John Torgan of the Save the Bay, and he's taking us out today on the lower portions of Blackstone River. You can actually see the city of Pawtucket behind me, because I'm being accused of working on my tan, but I'm really on a mission. I don't think anybody in New England can have missed the fact that we have undergone a tremendous amount of rain here in June. Every small meandering stream in New England has been turned into a raging torrent, and that's where the mission comes in. Because you look around us, a lot of this area is floating with foul-smelling, nasty stuff. Where did it come from? How did it get in our river? Well, to find the answer to that problem, we've got to play detective. So join me as we try to understand what has caused these high levels of pollution in the Blackstone River and Narragansett Bay. Understand what happened and also what you can do to make it better. As a ranger in the National Park Service, part of my job is to interpret the history, landscape, cultures, and resources of Blackstone Valley. As I make my way across Narragansett Bay, joined by Allison McDeedy and John Torgan, skipper of the Baykeeper, we're seeking to understand just what the heavy rains of June 1998 have done to the bay. What were the combined roles of Mother Nature and man that closed shellfish beds and beaches? Is it a normal function of nature that pollution levels have risen so dramatically? Or is it ourselves, the human part of the equation, that played a significant role in the pollution we see here in the bay? What will these cloudy waters reveal? Who's to blame? Tough questions with no easy answers. So we explore, hoping to find answers, willing to seek the truth. We're sitting in the upper part of Narragansett Bay here in just outside Providence, Rhode Island, with the captain of the Baykeeper, John Torgan, who's with Save the Bay. And John is taking us out because we're doing some investigative work today, aren't we, John?
That's right. Recent rainfall events have caused raw sewage bypasses from many of the treatment plants here in the Providence River that lead into Narragansett Bay. All of these bypasses are in effect making it impossible to swim or shellfish safely in the upper bay anywhere right now north of Prudence Island. The amount of sewage bacteria in the bay is just about the worst I've ever seen right now. We're out here today just to poke around and see what we can find out. Fortunately, it's not too smelly and you're not seeing a whole lot of floatables right now. A lot of the times what you don't see that can make you sick. On the positive side, under normal conditions, any waters in the lower Providence River, upper Narragansett Bay, and really all of Narragansett Bay proper are safe for swimming. Recent rainfalls have been so heavy. This is really an unprecedented rain season this June of 1998. And what we've ended up with is a bay that is brown. It's sort of tea-colored from algae and tannins, and you can see this is not the normal color of the river at this time of year. And that extends about 15 miles to the south of us off Prudence Island. The state has closed this entire area to fishing and, to shell fishing and swimming. Fin fishing, rod and reel fishing for fish is still okay. Boating is still okay to do. But the health department is advising people that if they come into contact with the water in the closed area to wash thoroughly with soap. This is totally unacceptable to Save the Bay. Discharges from wastewater treatment plants still a major source of pollution here, and especially when you get this far up into the Blackstone and the Providence River, that's a lot of volume of either treated, untreated, or partially treated sewage, and all of that together will have an effect. We want to get that to the highest standard possible. Save the Bay yesterday released a report called The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly, where we rate the wastewater treatment plants on their performance against the law, against the permits that are set for them by the government. And we have seen since 1983 greater than a 70% reduction in conventional pollutants to the bay. In that same time, we've seen an order of magnitude decrease in toxic pollutants, things like metals and other, PCBs, dioxins, and all these sorts of things, decreased dramatically. So we're really looking at, for the upper bay and the river, tremendous improvements in water quality and in trends in general. However, with the recent rains, it just goes to show you that an antiquated infrastructure will fail. The lines are old, and when you get a heavy rainstorm, all of that rainwater and stormwater from the streets collects in the sewers with wastewater from homes and businesses, and that just overwhelms the sewage treatment plant and is bypassed directly. Presently, we have an average of 71 sewage overflows per year. Every time it's raining more than about a half an inch, it overwhelms our existing sewage treatment plants, and it goes right into the bay, untreated or partially treated. And that closes shellfishing areas and swimming areas, causing great economic harm as well as aesthetic harm to the upper bay.
John, in your estimate, what are some of the things we can do?
Well, you're right on. I mean, it's nobody's fault that this is happening, but there are things we can do. Big treatment plants like the Fields Point treatment plant across from us, all of the Narragansett Bay commission treatment plants that service the Providence and greater Providence area have agreed to a plan called the Combined Sewer Overflow Plan, the first phase of which is slated to be implemented in 1999 to 2000, if it is funded on time. And this would consist of building underground storage tunnels to hold wastewater during rainfall events so that we keep it out of the bay. And then after that rainfall event subsides, they bleed that untreated wastewater back through the system to make sure it's properly processed before it gets back into the river here. If we get that, those 71 overflows I told you about, we estimate would be reduced to 4 per year. If we get 4 instead of 71, we will reopen swimming areas, we will reopen shellfishing areas in the upper bay, and we will dramatically improve the aesthetic and environmental quality of the river.
As in any story, there's good news, and then again, there's the bad news. As we leave the bay and head up the Blackstone River to Pawtucket, just perhaps we'll uncover some more parts of this water quality puzzle. Allison McDeedy, the Community Pollution Prevention Project Manager for the Blackstone Valley, may have some information to help us in our discovery.
Allison, another part of this, the pollution story here in the Blackstone has to do with non-point source pollution.
That's correct, yeah.
Now what is that and how does it work?
Well, non-point source pollution is any source of pollution to a water body that doesn't have a very distinct point of discharge, like you would have coming from a facility or a wastewater discharge wastewater treatment facility. So non-point source pollution comes from all of our land activities. So that includes, fertilizing your lawn. If it rains, there's runoff that goes into our water bodies. Storm drains collect water from runoff on the roads, and these are discharged into our water bodies as well. So it's really essentially anything that runs off and runs into the water body.
Now, with all the heavy rain New England has had here, that is all accentuated, isn't it?
Absolutely, yes. The intense rains that we've had actually have created more problems because they're actually overflowing some of the storm drains. In some instances, some of these storm drains can go to the wastewater treatment facility where they're treated before they're discharged into a water body. In this case, they're really overflowing. All sorts of things are coming out of discharges. There's soda cans and, fast food trash that's actually appearing along all of our water bodies and our streams. People have a tendency in some cases to use storm drains as a means of disposing of their trash, whether it be lawn clippings, pet waste, cigarette butts, anything of that nature. Now, oftentimes those storm drains are cleaned out by the municipal officials, and then they're properly disposed of in the trash. However, when the rains come and these haven't been cleaned out, all of that waste material gets dumped into our rivers. There's been intensive studies being done on the river by both the environmental protection agencies and the departments of environmental protection. And what they found is actually the water quality exceedances that we have that prevent the water bodies from being fishable or swimmable are actually attributed to non-point source pollution. So businesses and facilities that are discharging directly to the rivers are actually doing a pretty good job meeting their discharge permits and protecting our waterways. The real problem is the activities that we're doing on land that are contributing pollutants to the water bodies, whether it's pollutants from the fertilizers that we use on our lawns, or whether or not it's from oil that may drip out of our car onto the street that gets washed down into the storm drains and then into the rivers. So actually the majority of the pollutant problem right now on the Blackstone River is this non-point source and not necessarily distinct point sources.
The only problem is that when Mother Nature dumps all this water on us at one time, it kind of accentuates the problems with wastewater treatment plants.
That's right, and we have nowhere to put it. And actually that's exacerbated by the phenomenal amount of growth that's going on in our valley right now. Every time someone puts up a home, they pave over a driveway. So we're increasing the amount of impervious surfaces that are in the valley. This increases the volume of water that's running off into our storm drains and into our rivers, and actually increases the flow rate. So you see more channelizing, more erosion, and it just exacerbates the problem.
What can we do about that?
Be aware of what you're doing. First of all, don't throw anything down a storm drain. Don't use that as a trash bin. That actually directly discharges into our rivers. Something like a cigarette butt has a 10-year lifespan before it's degraded in the environment. So every time you throw out a cigarette butt, that's going to be in our river system for the next 10 years. Be considerate when you're fertilizing your lawn. Make sure that you're using the right amount. Approximately, most people use approximately 7 times as much fertilizer and pesticides that is actually needed around their homes. So be aware, and be conscientious about what you're using and where you're putting your trash. A good thing to remember too is also when you put your recyclables out for recycling, make sure that they're actually contained in the recyclable containers, so that when the wind blows, they're not washed into the rivers or into the storm drains either.
Good point, good point.
Our detective work has led us upriver into the rural countryside of the northern part of the Blackstone Valley. Now, there's still a lot of mills here, but the rolling hillsides reveal that the agricultural presence here in the valley is still really visible. The river is different here. It twists and it turns, and on a hot summer day like today, the river appears almost lethargic. Yet, in that water behind us, there's pollution. Now, we're going to meet 2 people, strong advocates for clean water. Deb Carey, the Mass Audubon Society, and you'd kind of expect Deb to be a strong advocate for the system, and Brad Lang of the Millbury Wastewater Treatment Plant. Wastewater treatment, don't those guys put nasty? You're going to be surprised to learn that Brad is probably one of the strongest advocates for clean water. And Deb and Brad are going to explain to us how our daily habits influence what goes into this water here. But Brad's a busy guy. We're going to have to head upriver real quick and catch him. See you there.
Brad, you've been here 27 years. This plant has won an EPA award. You must have seen an awful lot of water go through this facility, huh?
Probably in the billions of gallons by now. I've never really totaled it up, but we do an average of about 330 million gallons a year.
That's an incredible amount of water. But one of the key things that came across very recently, we had all the heavy rain, was what your average is and what kind of water came through during that heavy flow period.
Yes, well, as we're standing here this morning and we can see what's happening around us here, water is coming down again. Wastewater treatment plants are actually not designed to treat and handle storm water discharges such as rain. That type of inflow doesn't do the wastewater treatment plant any good. It robs capacity for the pipes that are put in the ground to carry wastewater, basically. It wasn't designed to carry clean water. So rainwater does impact our treatment significantly.
Yeah. Now, how much came through here with that heavy rain?
Well, as you said, I've been here 27 years, and in those times, we call them events that we have through the years, I was told that this was the wettest spring we've had in 50 years. I believe that. Normally, any given day, my wastewater plant will receive approximately 1 million gallons a day, Chuck. In the past 2 events this past spring, we've exceeded flows of 5 million gallons.
5 million gallons of water just to this plant to go into the river?
Yes, and basically the wastewater part of that flow hadn't changed. I mean, we were still receiving the basic wastewater treatment. I mean, the basic product of wastewater, the solids end of it. That hasn't changed. It's the additional 4 million gallons of clean water that becomes a problem. The engineers like to say that dilution is not the solution to pollution.
I like that.
But unfortunately, when the flows exceed design capacities, the wastewater plants simply don't work as efficiently as they're intended to. So yes, solids are washed out into the receiving streams usually. And again, in those periods, the river is having a bad day. Millbury has a population of 12,500 people. We, as individuals, waste a lot of water, unfortunately.
That's true.
The term has been used that 70 gallons a day per person is not, that's pretty much the norm around this part of the country. Millbury's plant is designed to treat 1.2 million gallons per day. It's been doing that since 1971. Our goal here at the wastewater plant is to try and capture as many pounds as physically possible in a given day's time. For instance, for every 1 million gallons that comes into the plant, there's probably about 2,000 pounds of material that we want to filter out of that wastewater to make that water in the receiving stream amenable to aquatic life.
There's a couple of things we as people can do to conserve water to help you out. Any ideas you have on what those specific things are? We
have a tendency to overuse water. I think as people, we all can be a little conservative. The industry itself has recognized for a long time that toilets, one simple solution was to lower the volume of water in each toilet that was used. The average toilet uses 5 to 6 gallons per flush. The newer toilets designed today handle 1.6 gallons per flush. Some of the things that I've learned, you shut the water off when you're brushing your teeth. You save a couple gallons a day, you know. So yeah, there is a lot of ways of conserving. Since I've been here, I've seen the river make remarkable progress. We can look out now and see fish in the river, and gives you a very good feeling in your heart that it's actually working. There's still things to overcome, but we're working in the right direction for it.
As we continue our detective work, we've made our way up into the headwaters of Broad Meadow Brook in Worcester, Massachusetts. We're with the director of Mass Audubon here in Worcester, Deb Carey. And Deb, what is significant about this spot we're in?
Well, here we are at the headwaters of our brook. And in a city, many brooks are formed by all the urban stormwater runoff that flows to the brook through all the catch basins that one sees along the road. So here is significant because our sanctuary, which has this brook flowing right through it, is put together from all the runoff from the streets around here. And they come in and get into a culvert underground and then come rushing out here. The problem is those catch basins collect an awful lot of pollution, and an awful lot of trash and litter comes running down here right through our brook. I guess it's good news and bad news. The bad news is it's because people have been littering a lot. The good news is that's something we can do something about. If we can encourage people to not throw things down on the street, they won't end up in the nearest lake, pond, or stream.
We have just come back from being on Narragansett Bay with the Save the Bay, the Baykeeper, and we found bags and cups and things floating in the bay. And that could be from here, right?
Absolutely. I mean, it's really remarkable, and especially with all the heavy rains we've had, so much is being washed into waterways everywhere. But you really see it here, and it has such a negative impact. Gets caught up, and you can see that it's it's all, the level of the water's been a lot higher, and it's carrying everything that's come down through the storm drain.
All these things get washed down the storm drains and they come out right behind us.
That's right. And also, you get a lot of sedimentation. You know, if someone's not been careful on a construction site and doesn't have their hay bales in place, or didn't worry about it, and there's a rainstorm, then all that, you know, unvegetated earth that's just exposed to the elements comes running off down into the catch basin and down into a stream.
Absolutely. Now, what can we do about that?
Number one, we can really make sure people understand, starting with everyone watching this show, that when you see a catch basin, that's just like a little underground stream, and it's going to flow to the nearest water body. So it's probably flowing to the place you like to swim or fish or boat. So it's really important to treat those as pristine waterways, not as a trash collecting bin. And unfortunately, a lot of people grow up thinking that catch basins are like little trash cans, and they're doing the right thing if they stick their cup down the catch basin. And that's just the opposite. That's just sending it right into the nearest pond.
And it is remarkable just how gunky and horrible this place looks.
Yeah, it's very sad. And on Earth Day in April, we had the Worcester Rotary Club down here. We cleaned it. It was absolutely beautiful. And all it takes is one rainstorm, and everybody's litter comes rushing down into our brook again.
That's incredible. April 24th, it was clean.
Here we are in July. Actually, it was dirty within 2 weeks.
No kidding.
So, now, the good news here is that we're working closely with the Department of Public Works to come up with a new design here so we can have a pond or a series of ponds, so we can set up a retention area so we can catch some of this litter and be able to put in litter gates and clean it out. It's in the design stages now, but I'm very excited about it. They're going to be our partners on this, and not only will it be great for solving some of the water pollution problems, it'll be fantastic for wildlife habitat, because we'll have some open water, which will attract different types of waterfowl, and we'll be able to have some vegetated wetlands established, so they'll act as a natural filter for the water. So I'm feeling upbeat about the future, but we still have to better control what's going into the water in the first place.
Our environmental problems don't have easy solutions. They're complex, require a lot of thought, and we need everybody involved.
That's right. You know, as far as I'm concerned, the DPW is the environmental agency in our city. You know, so much of what they work on and control, everything from street trees along the roads to all the waterways and everything that goes into them, they're really the folks who can have the most impact, and they think that way too. So it makes sense that the environmentalists are teamed up with the DPW folks.
Rivers have always been a central part of America's settlement patterns and upward growth. Yet the tools to keep them clean have been few. Now, new energy to clean and protect our rivers has come from the President with the great support of our congressional delegation in Washington.
And it all began 18 months ago when the President, in his State of the Union address, mentioned his plan to have a competitive competition across the nation for the naming of 10 outstanding rivers as American Heritage Rivers. And as he spoke, I couldn't help but thinking, Mr. President, I got the river for you. You don't have to move an inch. We got it for you. And that river obviously was the Blackstone River Valley National Heritage Corridor, including the Woonasquatucket. And so I wrote to the President immediately about his plan and to recommend that he name the Blackstone.
But why the Blackstone and Woonasquatucket rivers? Aren't there many more powerful rivers more worthy than these?
On this river, our country made the transition from a nation of rural farmers to an industrial powerhouse. On this river, thousands of immigrants found work and staked their claim to the American dream. On this river, prosperity flowed. The Blackstone has often been called the hardest working river in America, and I think that was reflected in the efforts of everyone here today. We all worked hard to make the White House know just how proud we are of this magnificent river.
So folks, what's the connection between being designated as an American Heritage River and ending river and stream pollution?
This designation will serve as an impetus for the expansion of the corridor's goals and partnerships. In the Corridor Commission offices, we have a stack of plans and studies 3 feet high telling us what we need to do to clean up and restore the river, and we are ready to take action. We envision salmon returning to the river, a system of riverside parks and greenways that allow people to canoe, hike, and bicycle along the rivers, our historic mill villages to be preserved as vital centers of our communities.
Senator Chafee, you have just done such a marvelous job in getting this key legislation passed as far as American Heritage Rivers designation for the Blackstone and Woonasquatucket Rivers. But what does that mean to the people of the Blackstone Valley and to the river itself?
Well, Chuck, it does 3 things. First, it gives prestige to the river. You can advertise the river. Come tour the Blackstone River Valley National Heritage Corridor. The Blackstone and the Woonasquatucket are American Heritage Rivers. They have some standing. It isn't just some forgotten stream somewhere. It's a river that has received presidential citation, as it were. And there are not very many of them, only 14 in the whole country. The second thing it does is that there will be appointed a river navigator for these designated rivers. And that means that river navigator is an individual who, in the Park Service presumably, or in the Department of Interior, whose duty it will be to give advice to those who are along the banks who want to improve the river. Maybe they want to encourage tourism to a greater extent. How do you go about it? This river navigator will be a knowledgeable individual and be able to not only tell these entities that wish to improve the river how to go about it, but also where some federal funds might be to attain that improvement. So there's the first. That's the second. The first is that greater prestige. Second is the river navigator who helps locate funds and so forth. The third is, if a river is a American Heritage River, it'll go to the head of the line. It'll receive priority in the awarding of federal funds, and that's very significant.
And finally, Senator, you have worked so hard for the clean water and our environment. Is that the type of legacy you'd like to leave in the Senate?
No question about it. I've been on, when I first came to the Senate in 1977, I went right on the Environment and Public Works Committee, and I've been on it ever since. That's some 22 years now. Now I'm chairman of it. I felt very strongly about the environment ever since I've been in public life.
Well, this has been a great day for you and a great day for the rivers. I want to thank you very much, sir.
Thank you very much, Chuck.
Well, this has been National Park Service Ranger Chuck Arning here in the Blackstone River Valley National Heritage Corridor. And let's face it, folks, this has been a dirty little story. That is, up until today. For today, with the announcement that Blackstone and Woonasquatucket Rivers have earned a designation as American Heritage Rivers, all things have changed. Now, with the great help of our congressional delegation, we've gotten the tools to fight river pollution. But you know what? It's up to us now. You see, one of the great things about democracy is the fact that you and I have the rights and responsibility to get involved. And get involved means join a river watershed association or save the bay. Find out where the waterways in your community go, where they empty into. Your wastewater treatment plant is meeting federal guidelines. And most importantly, non-point source pollution. We can change our behaviors to make a big difference in the quality of our water. Conservation of water is also another way you and I can become very committed to cleaning up the river systems. So until next time, I hope to see you on the river.